So you're in the market for a brand new Mac and you can't decide whether to go for the more affordable MacBook Air or the significantly more expensive entry-level MacBook Pro. I've had the pleasure of using the M4 MacBook Pro since late 2024, and I've brought it with me to Vegas for CES 2025 in early January. And it was one of the two devices I brought on my recent honeymoon in Europe. Yes, I got married and the wedding was awesome. Video coming very soon for that. As for the M4 MacBook Air, this came out in March 2025, and I've had the chance to really dive in and use it for the last few months, which really put kind of a blunder on me having to rethink what kind of laptop works for my life. Is it better to save money and just get an M4 Air because the thinness of it is so appetizing, but at what cost? And then on the other hand, the Pro comes with so many extra bells and whistles, but are those features truly worth paying for? We'll answer all of these questions by comparing the design, display, performance, battery life, and overall price to value ratio to figure out which laptop is right for you, and I'll also share what laptop works best for someone like me. Starting off with the design, the biggest difference between these devices is how it feels to travel with and take around, as depending on your needs, some things can be deal breakers. For starters, the MacBook Air is noticeably thinner and lighter than the MacBook Pro. It kind of makes a real difference when packing your bag. It just slides in that much more easily and doesn't add as much weight alongside everything else that you are already carrying. I have the 15-inch Air, and even at this massive size, it still feels quite portable, way more so than the equivalent 16-inch MacBook Pro models, which are just behemoths to take around. I currently use a 14-inch M4 MacBook Pro, and I think this size is a good sweet spot for not being so crazy to put inside your bag. But things can get more cumbersome on a MacBook Air, especially if you're someone who needs access to HDMI or an SD card slot, as then you'll have to also travel with a dongle and extra peripherals, which can take up extra space in your bag and just make the overall package feel less portable. The Pro just doesn't have any of these issues. It has all the extra ports built in, keeping everything you travel with as just one complete package. And speaking of travel, charging gear is a huge part of that setup for me as well. I've actually partnered up with Anker in this portion of the video to check out their new Prime 27,650 milliamp hour power bank, and it has become my go-to anywhere that I go. It packs so much battery to charge my phone, iPad, and MacBook multiple times, but it still also stays surprisingly compact. You get 2 USB-C ports, 1 USB-A port, and support for 250 watts of total fast charging. Just a single USB-C port can go up to 140 watts, so my MacBook Pro can charge up to 50% in just under 30 minutes. But what really impressed me though is the charging base. You just drop the power bank onto it, there's no cables involved, and it charges wirelessly and really fast. I used to just forget to charge my power banks all the time, and this setup has made that so much easier. It's just always ready to go when I need it and fully charged. And on top of that, the base has 3 USB ports, so I can top up other devices at the same time, which is unbelievably convenient as well. Within the setup, I've also been using Anker's Prime USB-C cable. It supports full 240 watt charging, handles extreme conditions, and is built to last practically forever. It's one of those accessories that I just never have to worry about. It just works. So if you want a charging setup that is powerful, reliable, and actually convenient to use, I'll have links below so you can check them out today. Now let's get back to the laptops. Another design element that might matter more than you'd expect is the color options. MacBook Airs come with a few fun colorways. In my case, I have the sky blue color, but you can also get your hands on Starlight, which looks a little bit like a pastel creamy gold. The Pros only come in space black or silver. I have the space black, and as much as I love how sleek it looks, it easily looks the dirtiest between both machines since it's just really sensitive to fingerprints. There's also the fact that the speakers on the MacBook Pro are built into the keyboard and fired directly at you, delivering crystal clear sound that is genuinely impressive for a MacBook or just for a laptop in general. The MacBook Air also sounds really good, but since its speakers are tucked into the hinge area, it just doesn't have like that same presence and clarity and bass as the Pro. But I want to kind of tread carefully here, like don't overthink this too much. if you've always owned, let's say, a Windows laptop, or this is your first Mac ever, either option is gonna get you really nice sound. It's just that the Pro will sound just that much better because the speakers are just exposed in a better way. One of the last big differences is the fact that the Air is fanless, while the Pro has a cooling system, which actually contributes to why the Air is so thin to begin with. I'll touch on later how this impacts performance, but I will say if you have zero tolerance for fan noise, then the MacBook Air is an obvious choice to consider. Moving on to the display differences, this is where I feel it truly depends on what kind of person you are. Starting with the MacBook Air, it comes in 13 and 15-inch sizes. I have the larger 15-inch in-house, and it's a 60 Hz Retina display that goes up to 500 nits of peak brightness with no support for HDR content. Whereas on the MacBook Pro, not only do you get support for HDR content, and the fact that the brightness can go as high as 1000 nits in SDR and 1600 nits in HDR, you're also getting a mini LED panel that supports a high refresh rate of 120 Hz. And if you really zoom in as well, the display bezels are just a few notches thinner on the Pro versus the Air if you care about that stuff. But how much of these differences actually matter in the real world? It kind of depends. If you look at my workflow on an M4 machine, I'm researching, I'm typing documents, watching content, all of which don't really need or require a high refresh rate and work perfectly fine on a standard 60 Hz panel because nothing's actually moving that much on the screen. But when it comes to screen brightness and clarity, well, the Pro really does win in a meaningful way. It's a lot easier to see in direct sunlight because the screen can get that much brighter, and you can pay for an optional nano texture upgrade that helps reduce glare even more, and honestly, over the last 6 months of using it, it actually does work. It has allowed me and unlocked, really, for my MacBook to be used in almost any kind of lighting condition and not to struggle to see the content on my screen, which I just can't say the same about the MacBook Air. When it comes to the mini LED on the Pro versus the standard Retina panel on the Air, yes, the differences exist, you can see it, but honestly, you have to be a huge display nerd and pixel peeper like me to even notice those differences. The Air's display on its own in isolation looks fantastic as is, and I'd be hard pressed to find someone who thinks otherwise. Moving on to the performance, both of these computers run the same M4 chip, but one has a cooling system, being the Pro, while the Air does not. And depending on how you use this computer, I'd argue you would almost see zero noticeable and meaningful gains in performance if you had cooling or not, given how efficient the M4 chip already is and who these laptops are intended for. Everything I've done on the M4 MacBook Pro over the last 6 months include video editing, photo editing, writing, research, AI tasks. I've done basically every kind of task to run this online business, which is my YouTube channel, and the performance on the MacBook Air is equal and barely noticeable in difference when doing those same things. Even when it comes to battery life, I just really can't tell the difference. Both of these last me 1 to 3 days depending on how I use it. I will say though that if you do tasks that will put your MacBook Air on overdrive and just cause so much heat, you're going to notice lag because there's no way for that chip to cool down on its own, whereas on the Pro, it has fans to help dissipate that heat faster. I haven't run into this issue too much, but workflows that do tax these chips hard exist and plentiful, and you'll know who you are, and if you know that's you, well, I'm not even sure if you should be looking at M4. I'd argue you should look at the M4 Pro, M4 Max, or even M3 Ultra if you're truly doing demanding work that requires a lot of cooling and a lot of graphical power. If we circle back though, I said in the beginning that the M4 Air can do what the M4 MacBook Pro can do just as well for 95% of the people watching. So if you really contextualize that, you can get the same capable M4 based computer from Apple for cheaper. But should you though? Is that the best use for your money, for your needs? When it comes to the price, we're saving $600 if you choose the M4 Air versus a M4 MacBook Pro. And when you read it out loud like that and you listen to that, you think, okay, deal, right? But not really. it depends. The price savings is a bit deceiving when you really dig into it, and I'm gonna show you why. The M4 MacBook Pro comes standard with 512 gigs of SSD, while the Air starts at 256 gigs of memory. I personally think that if this is going to be your forever computer for the next 3 to 6 years, you should really consider having at least 512 gigs of storage. You just get so much more flexibility with that, and you can't upgrade this in the future unless you want to make use of external SSDs, which everybody I talk to these days doesn't really like to do that except for me. But for some people watching, like, you can make 256 gigs work, and if that's you, more power to you. You can save a bunch of money here. But if we make this an apples to apples comparison, the M4 Air at 512 gigs of SSD is now $1199, making the difference in price just $400. And I could argue though that you could also take advantage of getting 24 gigs of RAM for the Air for another $200, since you can't upgrade RAM in the future, and I would always advise for you to get as much RAM as you can afford, and you would still be $100 below the starting price of the M4 MacBook Pro, which would come with only 16 gigs of RAM to start. So from like a pure performance upgrade perspective, you can buy more performance on the M4 Air for cheaper overall because you can get more RAM, but we have to remember you get a lot. Even at that $400 difference on the Pro. Like, you're getting a higher refresh rate panel, a mini LED panel at that, much better speakers, more ports, an actual cooling system, which can be a pro or a con, but you know, again, the ability to get nano texture, which is huge. Like, trust me, I will forever get this upgrade on my computer when it's available. And I haven't even mentioned this yet, but you could also get a fast 70-watt charger out of the box with the Pro. That's an optional upgrade that you have to pay for on the MacBook Air. All is to say though, that like it's not bad value to pay up between $400 to $600 to get all the things you get with the Pro. Like, I think it's worth it. It just all comes down to your priorities at the end of the day. I think for most people watching, especially in this tough economy with tariffs and all these things going on, it's wiser to save your money where you can, and I'd always push for you to get the M4 MacBook Air instead. It's like incredible value, but if you can spend a little extra, I think you're gonna get a lot more convenience with the MacBook Pro version with M4, and that's the one that I would personally choose if I had to go with one or the other because of all the things that I said, but most importantly, getting that nano texture has just been huge for me, and it just made like it feel limitless where I can work with my MacBook, and I just can't say the same when it comes to the MacBook Air. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Drop a blue heart if you did finish this video, and subscribe if you're a brand new to my channel. We are on our way to 70,000 subscribers, so any support would be greatly appreciated, and I'll talk to all of you guys in the next one. Peace.